I think if you told some people that you were in that famous death scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, they'd have to go back and look at it again because they probably didn't know it was you right off the bat.
Yeah.
Has that stuck with you? Have people come up to you over
yeah,
the years?
Yeah, but it's always very pleasant. I mean, what happens often is that particularly people who are of the same generation, will say things like, "Oh, that was the first movie where I noticed you," or "I remember you in that movie." But what's really gratifying is when younger people, young film fans, like in their people who know me, say from the Spider-Man movies, then kind of go, "Oh my God, you were the guy in or they're doing a deep dive into Spielberg's movies, or someone tells them you've got to watch this movie. This is what started it all, or whatever." And yeah, there's a lot of surprise because I was 26, something like that, and but that movie. It was my first film.
Really?
Oh yeah, very first. I'd never stepped in front of a camera before that. So it was a calling card. It was my introduction to film. It's when I fell in love with movies. So it's been a great gift, all these years.
The first time you saw it, what was your reaction? Since it was your first film.
Well, I kind of loved it, and I sort of, I was rather proud of myself in a sort of silly way, but. It was when the film was released, when as we were shooting it, because I had no experience in film, I didn't really know how films worked. I wasn't really technically, I wasn't technically sort of geared up for it. I didn't understand the technique or cutting or editing. I didn't understand any of the techniques. So we would shoot a scene, and then I would go to Dailies the next day to watch that scene or takes of the scene, and I would see things that I did that I thought, oh no, that's terrible. I sort of did this too much. That's too much. And then I would come in the next day to work with an attitude that trying to fix what I saw before, which was pointless, of course, because I didn't really understand the technique of there are takes, you take the best bits and you put them together. I didn't understand the editing skills. So I was really learning on the job, and that was kind of a bit difficult because I didn't quite understand what was going on. I mean, I'll give you an example. The focus puller would put tape on the floor, to give the actor a guide as to where to stand and, to stay in focus. I had no idea what that was for. Nobody explained it to me. So I thought it was something to do with what they were doing. I thought, well, it doesn't nothing to do with me. So I completely ignored them. And I would be in and out. And now, Dougie Slocum, who was the movie's lighting cameraman, who was a legend, he was a legend. He could have very easily sent someone to tell me, hit your marks, but he came round from behind the camera, like a real gentleman. He came round behind the camera and he said, "We love what you're doing, but it would be absolutely wonderful if we could get it in focus." And then he explained what these bits of tape were for. And then, of course, the penny dropped. But that's how green I was, that's how naive I was. So watching Dailies was a bit of a torture because it was I was just seeing myself having to correct. And then eventually, I think after about a few days, it was Steven Spielberg who suggested I don't go to Dailies.
Really?
Yeah, because I think he understood. He could see that I wasn't understanding that Dailies are essentially a technical reference. They're all about, did we get the lighting right? Is the makeup okay? Do the costumes work? The contrast between the actors and the background, is all of that stuff. That's all really what the Dailies are about. But of course, when I saw the finished film, I was delighted, and the fact that, but the irony is, of course, that my character gets his within 7 minutes or something. But because that little portion of the movie had nothing to do with the rest of the film, they mined that 7 minutes for all the trailers. So it was me and Harrison all over the trailers. So people are kind of calling me and saying, Fred, you got this great big part in this movie. I said, no. If you go to the bathroom, you're going to miss me. I mean, make sure you get your popcorn early. But it was a treat. It was a delight. I was honoured to be in it. I still feel like as for a young actor, for his first film, I mean, it was a blessing.